The King of the Wood, a tale of shadows and swords. In the heart of the Alban hills, where the rugged slopes of ancient volcanoes rise above the golden plains of the Campania, lies a hidden gem known as the Lake of Nemi, Diana's Mirror, as the ancients called it. Imagine a place so serene it seems to hold its breath, a glassy lake cradled in a green hollow, fringed by dense woods where wildflowers bloom as they did 2,000 springs ago. The air is still, broken only by the soft lapping of water against the shore, and the Italian villages perched on its banks, Nemi and Arisha, seem to slumber under the weight of time. Here, the goddess Diana, mistress of the wild, might still wander, her presence lingering in the whisper of leaves and the flicker of sunlight through the trees. Yet beneath this tranquil beauty lies a darker tale, a tragedy as old as the hills themselves, where sacred rites and savage deeds intertwine. Long ago, in the days when Rome was young and the forests of Latium teemed with untamed life, this woodland lake was home to a sacred grove dedicated to Diana Nemorensis, Diana of the woodland glade. The grove, nestled on a flat terrace beneath the steep cliffs crowned by the village of Nemi, was no ordinary sanctuary. It was a place of pilgrimage, where devotees from across the land came to honor the huntress goddess. The precinct was grand, its boundaries marked by mighty retaining walls carved into the hillside, studded with chapels where votive offerings gleamed. A temple, built of solid peperino stone and adorned with marble cornices and terracotta friezes, stood at its heart, its bronze tiles glinting in the sun. The wealth of the shrine was legendary, its coffers filled with treasures that even the great Octavian once plundered to fund his wars. Pilgrims, rich and poor, climbed the long slope from Arisha, their prayers mingling with the curses and blessings of beggars who lined the path, hoping for alms. Diana was revered here as the patroness of the hunt, her image, clad in a short tunic, high boots, and a quiver slung over her shoulder, captured in countless statuettes unearthed from the grove. Hunters offered bronze spears and images of stags, seeking her favor in the chase, while herdsmen dedicated rude figures of cows and pigs, praying for her blessing on their flocks. Like her Greek sister Artemis, Diana watched over both wild beasts and domestic herds, her sacred grove a haven for all creatures of the wood. Women, too, flocked to her shrine, offering gifts for safe childbirth, for Diana was believed to ease the pains of labor. Fire played a central role in her worship, her festival on the 13th of August lighting up the grove with torches that cast a ruddy glow across the lake. Every hearth in Italy burned with holy rites that day, and women crowned with wreaths carried lighted torches to fulfill their vows. A perpetual flame, tended by Vestal Virgins, burned in a round temple within the precinct, marking Diana as Vesta, guardian of the sacred fire. But the grove held a secret far darker than its serene beauty suggested. Among the trees, under the dappled shade, a grim figure prowled, a man with a drawn sword, his eyes darting warily as if danger lurked in every shadow. He was the priest of Diana, known as the King of the Wood, but his title came at a terrible price. The rule of the sanctuary was brutal and ancient. To claim the priesthood, a man had to slay the reigning priest in single combat, and he, in turn, would hold the title until a stronger or craftier challenger cut him down. Day and night, in summer's heat or winter's chill, the King of the Wood kept his lonely vigil, his life hanging by the thread of his vigilance. A moment's weakness, a faltering step, or the graying of his hair could spell his doom. To pilgrims seeking Diana's grace, his stern presence cast a shadow over the idyllic landscape, like a storm cloud blotting out the sun. Legend whispered that this strange custom began with Orestes, the Greek hero who fled to Italy with the image of the Tauric Diana, a goddess once appeased with human blood. In her savage rites, every stranger who landed on her shores was sacrificed, but in Italy, the ritual softened. Within the grove grew a sacred tree, its branches untouchable except by a runaway slave who dared to break one off. If he succeeded, he earned the right to challenge the priest in combat, and if he won, he became the new king of the wood. The fateful branch, it was said, was the golden bough that Aeneas plucked to venture into the underworld, a symbol of life and death intertwined. This rule of succession by the sword persisted into the days of the Roman Empire, when Caligula, in one of his cruel whims, hired a thug to slay a priest he deemed too long in office. The grove was not Diana's alone. She She shared it with two lesser divinities, Egeria, the nymph of a clear spring that cascaded into the lake, and Virbius, a mysterious figure tied to the Greek hero Hippolytus. Egeria, whose bubbling waters were believed to heal the sick and aid women in childbirth, was said to have been the beloved of King Numa, who sought her wisdom in the grove's secrecy. Her spring, once carried by Vestals to cleanse the temple of Vesta in Rome, was a sacred lifeline, its virtues enduring even in modern times. Virbius, on the other hand, was the reborn Hippolytus, a chaste hunter who spurned love and met a tragic end, dragged to death by his horses after a betrayal by his stepmother Phaedra. Diana, grieving her companion, restored him to life and hid him in Nemi's woods under Egeria's care, where he reigned as a king and dedicated a precinct to the goddess. Horses were banned from the grove in his honor, and his image was too sacred to touch. The myths of Orestes and Hippolytus, though vivid, were likely woven to explain the grove's strange rites, their inconsistencies betraying their invented nature. Yet they hint at the sanctuary's ancient roots, stretching back to a time when Italy was a wilder land, its people hunters and herdsmen living among untamed forests. A tradition, recorded by Cato the Elder, claimed the grove was founded by a Latin dictator named Egerius, uniting cities like Tusculum and Aricia in worship. But the barbarity of the priesthood's rule suggests an older origin, from an era before civilization tamed the land, a relic of a savage past preserved in the heart of Rome's glory. As the sun sets over Nemi's lake, casting golden ripples across its surface, the grove's tragic history lingers. Picture a stormy autumn night, the wind moaning through bare branches, dead leaves crunching underfoot. In the twilight, the king of the wood paces, his sword gleaming faintly in the moonlight, ever watchful for the challenger who will come. The beauty of the landscape, its dreamy skies, sparkling waters, and verdant woods, stands in stark contrast to the bloodshed it has witnessed, a reminder that even in the holiest places, the shadows of the past endure. The love of a goddess, Hippolytus and Artemis at Troezen. In the ancient land of Troezen, where the rugged mountains meet a tranquil bay fringed with groves of oranges, lemons, and towering cypresses, a sacred story unfolded, a tale of a youthful hero and a goddess whose bond shaped the rituals of a people. The bay, almost landlocked, shimmered under the sun, its blue waters reflecting the somber pines of Poseidon's sacred island across the waves. Here, in this fertile strip of land, the people of Troezen honored Hippolytus, a figure both mortal and divine, whose tragic fate and divine love left an indelible mark on their traditions. Hippolytus, the handsome son of Theseus, was no ordinary man. Legend painted him as a chaste hunter, trained by the centaur Chiron to chase wild beasts through the greenwood, his heart devoted to Artemis, the goddess of the wild. In Troezen, his ancestral home, a sanctuary stood in his honor, its temple housing an ancient image of the hero. A priest, chosen for life, tended the sacred rites, and every year, a festival celebrated Hippolytus with sacrifices and mournful chants. Unwed maidens, their voices heavy with sorrow, sang of his untimely death, offering locks of their hair to his temple before they married. Young men, too, shaved their first beards and dedicated them to him, a ritual binding them to the hero's memory. His grave, hidden from sight, was said to lie within the precinct, a silent testament to his enduring presence. But why was Hippolytus so revered, and why did his story echo in the sacred grove of Diana at Nemi, far across the sea? To understand this, we must delve into the myths that entwined him with Artemis and the darker currents that flowed beneath his worship. The tale begins with a love that defied mortal bounds. Hippolytus, fair and youthful, was said to be the beloved of Artemis, the goddess who roamed the wilds with bow and hound. Unlike the modern image of a chaste maiden, Artemis was no mere huntress. To the ancients, she was the embodiment of nature's untamed vitality, the sprouting meadow, the ripening corn, the vigor of beasts and men. She was a goddess of fertility, not of barren virginity, her power nurturing the earth's abundance and aiding women in childbirth. Her title Parthenos, often translated as a virgin, meant only an unmarried woman, and in the old days, this carried no vow of celibacy. At Ephesus, her great sanctuary bore witness to her true nature. Statues depicted her with a multitude of breasts, animals springing from her body, and symbols of fertility, lions, bulls, stags, and roses adorning her form. She was the universal mother, a force of life itself. In Trozen, Hippolytus was her chosen consort, not merely her worshipper. His rejection of mortal women, particularly the amorous Phaedra, was no act of cold asceticism but a sign of his devotion to the goddess. Phaedra, some say, was a mortal mask for Aphrodite, the goddess of love, whose rivalry with Artemis mirrored the mythic contest between Aphrodite and Proserpine over Adonis. In Euripides' tragedy, it was Aphrodite's wrath at Hippolytus's disdain that led to his doom, using Phaedra as her instrument. Within Hippolytus's sanctuary stood a temple to peeping Aphrodite, named for Phaedra's longing gaze as she watched him at his sports, or perhaps for Aphrodite herself, spying on her rival's beloved. Nearby grew a myrtle tree, its leaves pierced by Phaedra's bodkin in her lovesick torment, a tree sacred to Aphrodite and linked to the birth of Adonis. At Athens, too, a temple of Aphrodite stood beside a mound marking Hippolytus's memory, their proximity hinting at a deeper connection between the hero and the goddess of love. This bond with Artemis and Aphrodite was no mere poetic fancy. Hippolytus, like Adonis, was one of those mortal lovers of goddesses whose beauty and youth came at a tragic cost. His story, like theirs, spoke of a deeper philosophy, the fleeting vitality of man bound to the eternal cycle of nature. The maidens and youths of Trozen offered their hair, symbols of their own vitality, at his shrine before marriage, not just to honor his chastity but to strengthen his union with Artemis. By giving their locks, they sought to ensure the fertility of the earth, the prosperity of their herds, and the fruitfulness of their own lives. This custom was not unique to Trozen. Across Greece and the East, young men and women dedicated their first hair or beards to gods like Apollo, Athena, or Artemis, believing these offerings carried the strength of puberty, the moment when life's creative power blossomed. In Egypt, parents shaved their children's heads after illness, weighing the hair against gold to feed sacred animals, believing it nourished the divine. In Byblos, women at the festival of Adonis shaved their heads or offered their chastity to Astarte, the goddess accepting either as a gift of fecundity. These acts were not mere rituals but exchanges mortals gave of their vitality to sustain the gods, who in turn blessed the land with abundance. The connection to fertility extended to the landscape of Trozen itself. Within Hippolytus's precinct, two female powers, Demia and Auxesia, were worshipped as maidens of the harvest. When famine struck Epidaurus, their images, carved from sacred olive wood, restored the land's bounty. A festival of stone throwing honored them, a rite linked to ensuring good crops in many cultures. Even the oaks of Trozen bore the mark of this fertility. Aphrodite was called Ascrea, she of the fruitless oak, and Artemis was Seronian, she of the hollow oak, where Hippolytus's chariot reins tangled, leading to his death. His name, meaning horse-loosed or horse-looser, tied him to horses, sacred to his grandsire Poseidon and linked to his own demise, while the horses found near a temple of wolfish Artemis hinted at a connection to wolves, perhaps reflecting Diana's role as protector of wild creatures. The myths of Hippolytus and Orestes, though unhistorical, were crafted to explain the strange rites at Nemi, where the king of the wood fought for his title with a sword. Orestes, linked to the bloodthirsty Tauric Diana, justified the murderous succession, while Hippolytus's death by horses explained their exclusion from the grove. But his deeper role as Artemis's consort suggested a ritual rooted in fertility, where the priest-king, like Hippolytus, was a mortal partner to the goddess, his life and death ensuring the land's vitality. On moonlit nights in Trozen, as maidens laid their tresses on Hippolytus's altar, they wove their own lives into this ancient cycle, their offerings a prayer for the earth's renewal and the goddess's enduring favor. The shadow of the grove, Verbius and the king of the wood. In the heart of the Alban hills, where the serene lake of Nemi mirrors the ancient woods, the sacred grove of Diana Nemorensis stood as a place of awe and dread. This was no mere sanctuary but a realm where the divine and mortal intertwined, where the goddess Diana, queen of the wild, reigned over woodlands, beasts, and the cycles of life. Her worship, rooted in the mists of time, was a tapestry of beauty and violence, of fertility and sacrifice, woven around a sacred tree and a priest-king whose fate was bound to it. At the center of this tale stands Verbius, a shadowy figure whose story illuminates the grim ritual of the King of the Wood, a priest who lived by the sword and died by it. Diana, the woodland goddess, was no distant deity. She was the lifeblood of the forest, the guardian of wild creatures and domestic herds, the bringer of bounty to the earth's fruits. Her sacred fire, tended by chaste Vestal Virgins in a round temple within the grove, burned perpetually, a beacon of her divine presence. Women sought her blessing for safe childbirth, offering prayers and votives to ease their labor. By her side was Egeria, the nymph of a clear spring that bubbled into the lake, her waters believed to heal and aid mothers in travail. Legend whispered that Egeria had once been the beloved of King Numa, meeting him in the grove's secrecy to inspire his laws. Together, Diana and Egeria embodied the nurturing power of nature, fostering life in its myriad forms. Yet Diana did not reign alone. She had a male companion, Verbius, whose story echoed the myths of other divine lovers. Verbius, it was said, was none other than Hippolytus, the chaste Greek hero reborn in the Italian forest. Loved by Artemis, Diana's Greek counterpart, he had spurned mortal women only to meet a tragic end, dragged to death by his horses. Rescued by Diana and hidden in Nemi's woods under Egeria's care, he became a king and dedicated a precinct to the goddess. The ancients saw in Verbius a parallel to Adonis, the beloved of Venus, or Attis, consort to the mother of the gods. Like them, he was a mortal partner to a goddess of fertility, his life intertwined with hers to ensure the land's abundance. This divine partnership cast a long shadow over the grove's most haunting ritual, the succession of the King of the Wood. The priest who bore this title was no ordinary man but a fugitive slave, armed with a sword and bound to a sacred tree in the grove. Only by breaking a bough, perhaps the fabled Golden Bough, could a challenger claim the right to fight him in single combat. If victorious, the challenger became the new king, only to live in constant fear of the next sword. This cycle of violence, where each priest slew his predecessor and awaited his own slayer, mirrored the mythic fate of Verbius. Just as Hippolytus was restored to life only to reign in solitude, so too did the kings of the wood embody a sacred role, their lives tied to the goddess and the tree they guarded. The bond between the priest and Diana was more than symbolic, it was intimate, almost marital. The King of the Wood, it seemed, was not just Diana's servant but her consort, much as Verbius had been. The sacred tree, perhaps an oak, was her embodiment, its branches a living extension of her divine presence. To guard it was to embrace her, to protect her essence with his life. In another sacred grove on the Alban hills, a noble Roman was known to treat a beech tree as if it were Diana herself, kissing its trunk, pouring wine over its roots, and lying in its shade. Such acts were not mere whimsy. In distant lands like India, men and women still wedded trees in sacred rites, a custom that may have once flourished in ancient Latium. The King of the Wood, then, might have been seen as wedded to the tree, his life and death ensuring the goddess's favor and the land's fertility. A relic of this tragic dynasty may have survived in a curious artifact, a double-headed bust unearthed in the grove. Carved in stone, it depicted two men, their faces heavy and coarse, neither Greek nor Roman but hinting at a barbarian origin, fitting for priests who were often runaway slaves. The younger man, beardless and resolute, gazed with steely determination, as if ready to kill. The older, with a matted beard and wild, anxious eyes, seemed to carry the weight of fear, his open mouth frozen in a grimace of dread. Strangest of all were the leaves, scalloped, perhaps oak, plastered across their necks and chests, as if the tree spirit clung to them. The older man's mustache, in profile, mimicked an oak leaf shape, suggesting the tree he guarded was indeed an oak. This bust, it seems, captured the eternal struggle of the King of the Wood, the reigning priest, haunted by his impending doom, and his youthful challenger, poised to claim his place. The leaves on the bust hinted at a deeper truth. The King of the Wood was not merely a guardian but an embodiment of the tree itself, draped in its foliage as a living symbol of Diana's power. His life, like the trees, was sacred, his death a sacrifice to renew the cycle of life. Yet this brutal ritual remained a mystery, its origins lost in the shadows of a barbarous past. To unravel it, one would need to sail beyond Italy's shores, to explore strange lands and stranger customs, where the threads of human belief might reveal why a priest-king lived and died by the sword in Diana's grove. The journey promised to be long, but the secrets it might uncover would illuminate the ancient heart of Nemi's sacred wood.